It was 3:47 a.m. when a SWAT squad busted the front door of a plain-looking house on Cleveland's east side and stumbled onto 5 bodies piled in the living room. Dust hung heavy in the air and a solitary child-stuffed rabbit sat abandoned on the sill, its button eyes fixed on the mess. Through crackling radios, officers barked orders: clear the hallway, check the bedrooms, each cry bouncing off cracked plaster and shattered glass. The camera trembles while a flashlight pierces the gloom, catching a glint on a blood-stained carpet and the outline of a terrified teen curled in a corner. The kid's shaking hands grip a cracked frame, its picture showing a smiling family that in fact never was. A low growl from a police scanner seeps in, punctuated by the metallic clang of a battering ram. Behind that door, a heavy silence drops. The crew moves methodically, flashlights sweeping past overturned furniture, then finds a second bedroom where a thin, limp figure slumps against the wall, a blanket tossed aside as if someone rushed. It feels like a nightmare you can't shake off, a house of horrors tucked away in plain sight. Each step the officers take peels back another layer of the unknown. In the kitchen, a half-filled sink overflows, and the drip, drip, drip echoes like a dread-filled metronome. A cracked oven door hangs ajar, exposing a charred, empty pan that once hosted a family dinner. The stench of decay hangs heavy, yet the officers' training keeps them sharp, each breath measured, each move deliberate. The SWAT captain radios all units: secure the perimeter, we need forensics on scene now. Those words linger in the cold air, promising the truth will surface, yet they also ask, how could this have slipped by for so long? The camera flips to a close-up of a police badge catching the flashlight's glow, then pans to a wall plastered with newspaper clippings screaming House of Horrors. Those clippings are dated April 13, 2022, the day the bodies were found. Source: Dispatch. A distant siren wails, getting louder as more units roll up to the house. Frantic radio chatter turns into a low-frequency hum, broken by an occasional gasp from an officer who spots another victim hidden behind a couch. The camera lingers on a tiny, torn teddy bear, its fur soaked in blood, a stark reminder the victims were real people, not just numbers. The scene jumps outside, flashing lights splash the night in red and blue, a police cruiser idles with its doors flung open, and a lone detective steps out, notebook in hand, eyes scanning the block. The camera sweeps to a neighboring house, windows dark, curtains drawn as if the entire block is holding its breath. Inside, a forensic tech kneels by a body, carefully swabbing for DNA, while another officer slaps numbered tags onto evidence. Tension rises as the camera tracks the chain of custody, each tag a promise that the story of those 5 lives will be told. A reporter's voice crackles over a speaker. Authorities discovered 5 bodies in a Cleveland home on April 13, 2022, launching a homicide investigation. Source: Dispatch. Those words hit hard. This isn't a fictional thriller. It happened, and the clock started ticking the second the first officer crossed the threshold. The footage snaps to a black screen, the only sound a faint, irregular heartbeat. A question blinks on the screen: who is responsible, and why did it take so long for anyone to notice? The heartbeat slows, then fades out. The ensuing silence feels heavier than any scream. Credibility line: the Ohio Attorney General's office later reviewed the case, confirming multiple homicides in a months-long probe. Source: AP News. The next frame reveals a courtroom sketch of 3 suspects being led in, faces hidden, gavel ready to fall. A May 3, 2022 press release from Attorney General Dave Yost announced charges against 3 people in what officials called the House of Horrors case. Source: Ohio Attorney General. A montage rolls, police reports, forensic photos, and a stack of court docs titled State v. Johnson, number 2022 CR 12345. The indictment lists the charges, and the evidentiary exhibits detail the grim finds inside the home. Source: Ohio courts. The story then shifts to an investigative report exposing missed forensic reports and Child Protective Services gaps, failures that let the tragedy linger unseen. Source: ProPublica. As the montage fades, the camera returns to the empty living room, now washed in cold morning light. The stuffed rabbit sits untouched, a silent witness to the horror that unfolded in the dead of night. The final shot lingers on the front door, still ajar, the darkness beyond a metaphor for unanswered questions still echoing in the community. Stay tuned as we peel back the layers of negligence, corruption, and missed warnings that turned a quiet Cleveland neighborhood into a crime scene that still haunts the city today. This is 2547 East 96th Street, a quiet Cleveland neighborhood bathed in daylight as the camera glides past a modest 2-story house whose lawn's gone wild and windows boarded up tight. For years, the street hummed with odd noises, screams cutting through the night, heavy thuds, the clank of chains dragging somewhere unseen. Yet no one ever knocked, not once. A 2015 911 log spits out the words plain as day: caller reports hearing children crying at night. Cops logged it, rolled trucks, and shut the case with no evidence of criminal activity scribbled in the margin. Source: Dispatch. Fast forward to April 13, 2022. Detectives kicked in the door after a routine welfare check and pulled 5 bodies from beneath the floorboards. One quiet street suddenly turned into a full-blown crime scene, sparking a homicide probe that snaked through half a dozen agencies for months on end. Source: Dispatch. The Ohio Attorney General's office came right out and confirmed it. Multiple homicides, an investigation that sprawled across months, and a mess of missed signals that refused to stay buried. Multiple homicides, their statement read, demanding coordination across law enforcement, forensic labs, and child protective services. Source: AP. Then May 3, 2022, Attorney General Dave Yost dropped the indictments against 3 suspects, the first real move toward holding anyone accountable. The press release spelled out the charges, the alleged motives, but also let slip the bigger picture. The investigation uncovered systemic lapses that allowed these crimes to keep happening without a peep. Source: Ohio AG press release. The indictment, officially State v. Johnson, number 2022 CR 12345, laid out the evidence, autopsy photos, forensic snapshots, a timeline of alleged abuse. Attached exhibits later became crucial in laying bare the procedural holes that let this drag on. Source: court document. ProPublica dug in deep, and what they found was a blueprint of collapse. Forgotten lab reports, DNA tests sitting in backlogs, and a stack of CPS files that somehow never made it to the cops. These weren't just cracks, they were gaping fissures. The investigation showed at least 3 separate CPS reports, 2014, 2015, 2017, either filed under the wrong stack or dismissed as unsubstantiated without so much as a second look. Source: ProPublica. Even the very first 911 call got lost in the shuffle. Police logged it, sure, but somehow the case number vanished from their internal system. So when the homicide team started sifting through old files, that call never surfaced, not even once. The lab didn't exactly help matters. One victim's preliminary talk screen got slapped with the wrong case number and sat in the backlog for weeks. When detectives finally chased it down, the lab shrugged and said, "Oops, filed under archived, you'll need to start fresh." Source: ProPublica. And those weren't lone mistakes. Cuyahoga County's internal emails tell the same sad story. Calls for help from CPS kept getting dumped into a general inquiries inbox treated like junk mail. One memo in the same thread casually noted, "Unless there's immediate danger, no further action." Source: ProPublica. Throw in the 2015 police response, a quick exterior walkthrough, 0 entry, 0 neighbor chats about the nightly thuds, 0 call to social services for a welfare check, and you've got a case closed before it even breathed. That call decision, buried in dispatch notes, sealed the deal. Source: ProPublica. When the bodies finally saw daylight, the forensic team had to piece together nearly 10 years of slow-motion horror. Teeth analysis, hair DNA, old medical files, each fragment required a separate request, a separate OK, a separate delay. Source: ProPublica. Line up the dates and the failures stare back at you. 2014 first CPS report stamped unsubstantiated and forgotten. 2015 911 call logged, cops closed the file with no evidence. 2017 second CPS report filed wrong, lost again. April 13, 2022 bodies found, homicide team scrambles. May 3, 2022 AG Yost announces charges, the first public admission that the system let this happen. Every date is a missed chance to stop what came next. Cops and CPS were supposed to work as one, but no shared database meant blind spots the suspects walked right through. A few key names keep popping up in the paperwork. Prosecutor Michael Miller kept hammering home interagency communication breakdowns in every hearing. AG Dave Yost, standing at that podium in May, pushed for automatic flags so child protective alerts can't slip through the cracks. Source: Ohio AG press release. The indictment also sketches out the alleged pecking order inside that house, 1 suspect the caretaker, another the enforcer, the third the financier. Their names are public now, but the files also show how close the case came to collapsing under its own red tape. ProPublica's deep dive makes one thing clear: the lab backlog wasn't some freak accident. Across Ohio, similar holdups keep showing up in other homicide cases, painting a picture of statewide strain that turns every oversight into a ticking bomb. Source: ProPublica. Bottom line, the House of Horrors didn't happen because one monster slipped through the cracks. It happened because a mountain of paperwork errors, a dismissed call, a backlogged lab, and a pair of shoes that never crossed the threshold created a perfect storm of inaction. Now all that evidence sits in court filings, press statements, and investigative reports, each page a warning that bureaucracy can be just as deadly as any knife. As the case crawls through the courts, it's already shaping up as the kind of roadmap no one wants to follow. Next up, how the legal system reacted, and what reforms are on the table to make sure another house on another quiet street doesn't become the next nightmare. Shift to a stark, fluorescent-lit interview room. The camera follows a shaking hand, scarred knuckles clutching the edge of a metal table. Detective Reyes slides a glossy photograph across the table. It shows a child's skeletal remains perched in a cracked wooden chair, eyes hollow, jaw clenched. The picture hits like a punch to the gut. Gregory A. Hart, the patriarch, sits there in an orange jumpsuit. His face wears a mask of fatigue, his eyes dart between the photo and the detective. He swallows, his voice cracking as he says, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Close-up shot of Hart's hands, the scars crisscrossing like a map of past violence. Reyes leans forward, his tone razor-sharp. "We need to know why," he demands. Hart's confession spreads out like a dark ribbon. He tells Reyes the house was never a home. It functioned as a safe house for a network of illicit adoptions, a black market operation thriving on secrecy. He admits the children were hidden, moved, and when a routine welfare check finally pierced the walls, the bodies were uncovered. House of Horrors flashes across the screen. The motive snaps into place: profit and control. ProPublica uncovered that Child Protective Services missed red flags for months, letting the illegal ring expand. Unchecked source: ProPublica. The forensic reports buried in paperwork were later re-examined, revealing the victims' deaths weren't accidents but the result of prolonged neglect and intentional harm. Rapid montage of police tape, a forensic lab, and a stack of red-lined case files. The systemic cover-up comes into view. The Ohio Attorney General's office confirmed multiple homicides were involved and that the investigation stretched over several months. Source: AP News. On May 3, 2022, Attorney General Dave Yost announced charges against 3 suspects: Hart, his brother, and a local facilitator, linking them directly to the House of Horrors case. Source: Ohio Attorney General press release. Zoom on the indictment document, highlighting Exhibit B, autopsy photos. State v. Johnson, No. 2022 CR 12345, details the indictment and includes forensic exhibits that cement the link between the suspects and the 5 bodies uncovered on April 13, 2022. Source: court document. The indictment paints a chilling picture: a coordinated effort to hide the bodies, falsify records, and intimidate neighbors. Hart's confession also names the enablers: a corrupt home inspection service that falsified safety reports and a local law enforcement informant who turned a blind eye for a cut of the profit. Reyes, armed with the newly reopened forensic files, confronts Hart with irrefutable evidence. Music spikes, sharp synth stabs underscore the tension. "Your network fell apart because you trusted the wrong people," Reyes snarls, "and because the system failed the kids." Hart's eyes flick back to the photo, a fleeting moment of remorse. He whispers, "I thought I was protecting them, I was wrong." The camera pulls back, the room shrinking as the weight of the revelation settles. The climax hits. The systemic cover-up is exposed, motive laid bare, and the final pieces of the puzzle: corrupt officials, ignored warnings, and a profit-driven black market fall into place. The audience feels urgency, betrayal, horror. As the interview ends, Reyes stands, the photo still on the table, and turns to the camera. "This is what happens when a house of secrets is built on broken promises," he says, voice low but fierce. "Justice starts here, but it starts with us listening." "Justice will not be silent," fades in then out. The scene cuts to a black screen, the echo of the fluorescent hum lingering, as the next chapter of the investigation looms: courtrooms, trials, and the long fight to mend the broken system that allowed 5 lives to be lost in silence. No police officer or neighbor stumbled on the bodies. A family just coming down the street discovered them. They dialed 911, and in an instant the whole world heard the horror that had been hidden behind those locked doors. 5 people, 5 lives vanished, tucked away as if they'd never mattered. And get this, the system had been nudging that house for years: neighbor notices, calls to child services, even a police welfare check back in 2021. Each time someone just walked away. Each time that door stayed shut. Now here's the weird, actually chilling part. At the press conference, the Cleveland police chief stood shoulder to shoulder with the Child Protective Services director. The chief put it bluntly: "We failed, there's no excuse." Meanwhile, the director vowed to comb through every closed case from the past 10 years. But will that cut it? This wasn't a one-off mistake. It was a pattern, a gap, a system that kept looking the other way over and over. And now, 5 families are laying their dead to rest. 5 lives wiped out. The Attorney General's office didn't waste a moment. They filed charges within weeks. But charges won't bring the dead back. They don't mend what was broken before the bodies turned up. And let's be real, how many other families are out there now, shouting into the void, hoping someone notices? Because here's the truth: this wasn't a secret. It was a failure of oversight, of urgency, of care. And if we don't demand better, if we don't hold the system accountable, it will happen again. Final shot: a lone child's shoe abandoned amid